here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of Tony Jenkins, who's been in a lot of bands right through from the very early 80s into the current time, actually. I will try and put some links in the notes below about what he's up to and also various gigs that he's got coming up later on in the year. But this is the interview, Tony, so you'll be able to find out more about him in this fascinating chat. So after several minutes of interesting but casual chat, we get down to the exciting subject of the early formative years. Tony, it's over to you.
Well, I was born in 1966, so a couple of years later.
Yes.
But myself and Dave, the bass player in the New Falls and Kobayashi, we went to school together in Haverhill in Suffolk and were friends up until about 16 and then drifted apart for about 30 years. So we were always meant to be in a band together. It just took about 35 years. But we got into things at the same time. So it started off with punk, the Jam, the Stranglers.
Yes.
Anything that said punk when you're, 12 years old, 13 years old, if it said punk on the label, we bought it.
Yes, you were very, because I always feel like I'm a bit too young for punk, and I'm 2 years older than you, because I don't know, I grew up in East, Suffolk as well, so that it was a sort of a little bit of a, it just felt like it was a bit behind the musical scene. Absolutely. Really. It was very big. Status Quo were the band of the moment. Shaky Stevens, but Status Quo the Quo just had this very committed fan base that and headbanging was quite the thing, really. So punk rock never, that seemed a bit too anarchic, really, and chaotic for those kind of heavy metal kids, bizarrely, who went to factories. So did you have any brothers or sisters that gave you any musical influences or directions at all?
I did, but they're a lot older than me. My sister's the next youngest. She's 10 years older. But my brother, who's 12 years older, he had a lot of the 60s stuff, the Beatles, general 60s stuff, which I then got into after punk, really. So I had the punk stuff, then got into the 60s stuff, like the Beatles, the Stones, anything from that era, really. And then into like the postcard label stuff.
Right.
Kitchen, Medium Cool, into the C86. So that was kind of that early 80s into, I think, 82, 83, Weekend, Young Marble Giants, that kind of band. They were really my favourites. Into the Smiths, but then more into the kitchenware stuff like Hurrah and the Dainties, Micro Disney, The Loft, Felt. I love Felt.
Yes.
So that real sort of post-punk thing was probably when everything took off for me.
Yeah, so when you got to 16, that would have been like 1982. Did you stay on after O-levels and do A-levels at that point, or were you...
No, I got straight out of school as quick as I could. And, music and other things, getting into work was far more important to me then. So, as soon as I could get out, I did. And then I ended up in Cambridge after about 3 or 4 years, and I've been here ever since, so...
Right, blimey. So when was your first musical moment then? Were you in a band at an early age? Because you sort of had this potted history of your sort of musical world, which was quite intense, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, well, myself and Dave, back in the day, would pick up a guitar and a drum and just make a noise, but there was no real talent. And at that point, Dave was even less talented than me. But when we met up again later on, he was far more talented than me. He plays guitar better. He plays bass in the band. And he's a really good songwriter as well. So we sort of got into punk together and made a racket. And then I joined a band called the Orbisons in the sort of mid-'80s. But that was after a couple of gigs. They were in Aldershot and I was in Haverhill.
Right.
I had a motorbike. It was a long way to go. But it was good fun, and it got me into singing in front of a crowd.
Yes.
And then I kind of stopped doing it for quite a while and got into the label side of things, did a couple of compilation tapes, the Everlasting Records label. And we kind of got into doing vinyl at the wrong time because CDs were just coming in. And as it happened later on with the New Falls, we were doing CDs when vinyl was coming back in. So we kind of missed the boat both ways, really. But
Yes.
the label lasted a couple of years. We put out the Writer Colour 12-inch and the Emily album, which are both really, really good releases.
Yes.
And it was really only in the last 15 years I've got into playing in bands properly. And that's been a long, drawn-out process, really.
So what was the first single you bought at when you go back to the late 70s, early 80s, what was that first single?
The first record I bought would have been Like Clockwork by the Boomtown Rats with my
Right.
own money. I do remember having a load of singles before that bought for me with some pretty dodgy stuff, but I do remember having Modern Lovers, Roadrunner, and
Right.
Egyptian Reggae, which I don't know how I managed to get those back in the day, but that was my pre-cool period that I got a couple of decent singles amongst. I remember having an ELO single for my sins. Yeah, I know. I know.
Well, I
It was
don't
perfect
know.
vinyl, and at 15, I thought 14 or whatever I was. No, younger than that. It was like quite interesting, but
Yes, I
it
mean,
never.
I quite like ELO. They were there in the 70s. I mean, there were other bands like Supertramp and
Oh, I can't abide Supertramp.
because I had a brother who was 7 years older, so he was into prog, but he also had
Yeah,
those things like Breakfast in America and
yeah.
Steely Dan and those sort of tracks.
Yeah, my brother had Jethro Tull and stuff like that, as well as some good stuff. He had some Jethro Tull albums which were unlistenable.
Yeah, so I did have this little bit of a funny kind of love, well, not love, but I still, I sort of used to sneak into his room and listen to these kind of prog rocky albums and be a little bit mesmerized. But there were things like, yeah, just some of it seemed really dull.
Yeah.
Supertramp were particularly dull, really, but kind of
Oh,
clever with it, I guess.
yeah, clever.
A bit too clever. And what was the
Yes.
first gig you went to?
The first gig I went to was in Ipswich Gaumont in 1981, and it was Bad Manners supported by Dolly Mixture. We
Ah,
all got into, yeah. So after punk, we got into ska, as I think everyone in Suffolk, Essex did. So the first gig I went to was Bad Manners, supported by Dolly Mixture, who I didn't know at the time were a Cambridge band. So
no. And I think one of them has got a book coming out very soon, hasn't
that's
she?
right. Yeah, but coincidentally, when I joined the Sound of Pop Art, our drummer Andrew, now deceased unfortunately, was Rachel from Dolly Mixture's brother. So she was married to Captain Sensible,
Yes.
and and Andrew was our drummer. So it's a small music world in the Cambridge area.
Yes. I think they had quite a lot of children, didn't they, as well?
I think so. Yeah. There
From
always seems to be
memory.
children around.
That did seem amazing, actually. My first gig was at the Ipswich Gaumont in Nine Below Zero,
All right.
which was quite interesting.
Oh,
I
it's
think it
not
was.
there. I assume it's not there anymore.
No, I have no idea. But I just remember someone said there's a spare ticket. Do you want to go to this gig? I'd never come across the band before, but suddenly it's like, oh, yes.
Yeah.
And they were amazing. I mean, you're always mesmerized at that first ever gig, isn't it? It's just,
Oh,
it's
you
kind
don't
of,
realise what it's going to be like. Yeah.
it's a bit like your first football match as well. I remember
Yeah.
going to Portman Road sometimes in the 70s and just being like unbelievably like overwhelmed by the tension and excitement of Bobby Robson's Blue and White Army. So it was quite exciting. So then, yeah, so you started a record. So you before anything, you started a record label.
Yeah. Well, with Dave from Hampshire, I did a couple of cassettes: Abigail's Birthday Party and Uncle Arthur's Pop Parlour, which kind of we contacted people we knew, like the Jazz Butcher, Raw Herbs, Corn Dollies, bands like that, and made two cassettes with booklets with a little cassette in a plastic bag, which are probably quite collectible now.
I would have thought so.
Yeah.
Fantastic lineup of
Oh, we got
bands
some
as well.
really good stuff. Yeah. Television personalities I got for the Everlasting tape. So we started Everlasting Records, and I got Me and My Desire by the Television personalities, and we sold hundreds of copies because that track hadn't been released anywhere else at the time, and it's a great song. So I
Yes.
think we did 2 or 3 pressings and must have sold a good 500, 600 copies of that cassette.
And what was it like starting a little record label up in the late 80s or during
Well,
the 80s?
it was surprising, really, because I worked in a record mail order company called Rhythm. So myself and Nick, who owned Rhythm, started the record label. And you don't realise how much cost goes into it. Now, Nick was funding it, and very quickly the bills add up and the money runs out because you do a 12-inch single and you say the band does £250 to record it, not knowing it's going to cost nearer £750. And then you buy a load of sleeves to print on, and you realise the printers can't use them, so you end up with a load of sleeves in your loft that you can't get rid of. And then 12-inch singles kind of went out of fashion a little bit for indie bands. So although we got good reviews for the Riot Colour 12-inch, it didn't sell particularly well. And you just think you get a good review and John Peel plays it, it'll sell. But we just got to that stage where it didn't.
No.
The Emily album was an incredible experience because they recorded it live in a barn in North Wales, recorded like the backing of the tracks, and we went up and stayed with them for a week recording this album. Then they went to a studio, and it was all recorded for less than £1,000. And now it's in The Guardian as one of those albums you've got to listen to, the sort of thing, one of the ones you've never heard that you've got to listen to. And I mean, Emily had done a single for Creation and Shalala and Isurian, which are little 3-minute indie pop songs. And we did a 7-track, hour-long album of, and one song's 15 minutes long, I think it is. Emily weren't the Emily that had been on Creation. they kind of let things expand a little bit. It was an incredible time.
Yes.
We went and stayed with them the first time, and they said, "Oh, you can stay with us." I thought that's handy in the studio. So we went to this studio, and they had a big liking for smoking the jazz cigarettes. So the smoke in the room was just incredible. It was like the smog. Pitch black, so you had no idea what the time was. The air was full of this smoke, and I mean, I've never smoked in my life, so I was high just from taking the fumes in. But it was an experience, that one.
Yes. And how long did the band last? Because actually, it's one shouldn't really know
Emily.
this. Yes.
I think after the album, they split up probably a year later. Oliver Jackson is still doing the odd thing. I get the odd message from him with a new recording or two. He's got a fantastic sort of deep voice, but I think he works in something. He's quite high up in something now. I can't remember now, but he does music as a sort of sideline.
Right.
Yeah.
Because then a few years ago, well, nearly 9 now, Fire Station Records brought out a retrospective of the band,
That's
didn't
right.
they?
Yeah, the CD's got the album on it. I was dealing with Uwe on that to get him the tapes of Rubal Kali to put on as the CD.
My God.
Which is really nice. It's such a good album. It really is.
Yes. And did they perform live much?
Not that I'm aware of. The first time we went to see them, we saw them playing Chester supporting Edsel Auctioneer. Do you remember them?
Oh, yes.
Back in the day. I don't think they played many gigs live after that. I think they had a bit of a fallout, the drummer and the singer. And Jan, the saxophone player, he sadly died not long after, I don't think. He got some sort of cancer, which I only found out by total accident, really.
Yes.
Yeah, but a lovely fellow as well. It was a real shame. He came and visited us once. We lived just north of Cambridge in a little village, and he just turned up on our doorstep totally unannounced and went to the pub with him for a couple of drinks. Really, really nice fella. Really sad.
Yes, my God. So how did you find Emily at this stage? How did they come onto your orbit?
I'd been in touch with them for a track for one of the cassettes. I think they were on, I think it was just the Everlasting cassette Emily were on. And I wrote to them for a track, and they sent a few songs which were nothing like the album at all. And so we put this song on the cassette, and then I sort of said, well, we're going to start a label. And also, I mean, Riot Colour had done a single for Dreamworld. Emily had done a single for Creation. So you knew they had a bit of a label there. And it certainly helped a bit. I think it helped us get reviews. It didn't, unfortunately, help us get fantastic sales. But I think they're both great. A great single and a great album. So.
Are they? And they also, Rise of Colour have also got a compilation on Fire Station.
That's right. Yeah, Fire Station. Yeah, I think Uwe gets all those 80s bands and puts them out.
Yes. How did you? Yeah. So, God, that's amazing. I'll have to try and track them down and find out what happened to them after that musical moment. But at that time, were you?
Riot Colour, one's in Australia, Ali's in Australia, and Dominic's in New Zealand now. But they're both contactable through Facebook. And Ollie Jackson is living in London. He's an architect. And I have little bits of contact with Ollie. He's still recording, like I say, doing the odd. He did an album 2 years ago. Can't remember the title off the top of my head now. I'll send you a link to it. That's a very good album. Very, very lo-fi.
Yes.
And some, totally
Did
solo.
you so on that on the label front? I mean, it was kind of interesting because there was like that indie pop period, as you mentioned, those labels and kitchenware records and 53rd and Third records, and
Yeah.
obviously there was all the other ones like Rough Trade and other bits and pieces. But by the late 80s, the music kind of world had slightly changed, hadn't it? Because Rough Trade had sort of gone bust, which had taken down a few other businesses, and then I sort of feel that the Smiths had such a dominance during that sort of 83 to 87 when they split up. There's the ecstasy world comes in, and then the Seattle grunge world. So for a lot of indie bands, it's quite a tricky time. I mean, there was a few
A lot
like
of bands changed, didn't they?
well, there was the ones who just went, right, that's it. We've swallowed the tab, and we're going to just get. And others were just like, well, no one's going to be interested. Like the Primitives and Mighty Lemon Drops and people like that were just like, we're not going to be able to make that jump. And then other bands like My Bloody Valentine and who else was it? There was Lush, I suppose, did well, and Carter, the Unstoppable Sex Machine, sort of managed to navigate their way out of that. But then you had the Seattle scene coming in. So it was quite, it must have been quite tricky trying to start a label in about 89, 90.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, like I say, I think we slightly missed the boat a bit, and yeah, probably put although they're great album and a great single, the music scene had moved on a bit, like you say, and Emily making a 7-track, 60-minute album of obscure kind of acid folk almost probably just didn't fit with what people were expecting.
Yes, it must
In
be
hindsight,
is it now a cult classic?
I think so. I mean, yeah, like I say, The Guardian did this thing of 50 albums that you won't have heard that you really should, and it was one of those. And yeah, I mean, I think anyone who's heard it really likes it. It's just getting people to hear it in the first place,
Yes. Well, I know that Creation Records during that late 80s brought out some really obscure bands. There's a guy called Simon Fisher Turner
Oh,
who
yeah,
did an album with Tilda Swinton, and I don't think more than 20 people would have bought the record, but it's a very avant-garde piece. I mean, it's quite unlistenable, but quite bizarre at the same time.
yeah.
But there's these kind of classics that they had on Creation Records. I think they even had Momus on the label as well, which
Yeah, for a while. And then
very
those bands like Something Pretty Beautiful, who did a couple of really good singles, but nothing more. And I really liked 18 Wheeler. I thought they were
oh yes.
really good. And they're, of course, the band that are famous for, they were the band Oasis were supporting when Alan McGee discovered them. But 18 Wheeler are so much more interesting than Oasis. It's like, Oasis has been done to death now. And that story is just so boring now. I want to know what 18 Wheeler are up to now.
Well, actually, because
Together.
there was another band that came out a bit later on called they did a single called the Generation that bought more shoes. Oh God, what's it called? Oh my God, we are the generation that bought more shoes. We are. I'll find this is good. We the generation that bought. I know that Adam Curtis, who makes videos, really likes this song. Johnny Boy, God. So the woman in that band was I think playing in a small band at that night in Glasgow that Alan McGee went to, and I think he went because of her and that band or something, and it happened to also have Oasis on the bill.
Yeah,
That was the kind of moment. But when I did the interview with her about this particular band, Johnny Boy, which I was fascinated about, because they did one album, some amazing songs, and then that was it. And then her backstory was kind of fascinating, and there was that rather overplayed story that we all don't
yeah,
need to listen
exactly.
to.
They're far more interesting, aren't they? Than the story that gets peddled out for all the films and all the interviews and all the books. It's like,
Yes, we really don't. We don't need that story anymore. But then, how did you come across this other band, Victorian Tin?
That was totally by accident because we ran this this independent mail order company. We were sending stuff all around the world, and we sending stuff to Sweden, and we put an advert in with the catalogue saying we're starting this label. If you've got any tapes you want to send us, we'll consider you for release. And in all honesty, we didn't get anything of real quality. It was all a bit, people recording in their shed, or there was probably one or two that were okay, but nothing we thought, I really want to release this. And then a little bit later, maybe because they'd got the catalogue later and it took longer to come from Sweden, we just got this tape with Scapegoat Palace written on it, and put it on, and immediately it was the best thing we'd had by a mile. And so we messaged them back and put, this tape is really, really good. And by that time, they'd changed their name to Victorian Tin, which I think is a line from a Chameleons song or something like that. I might be wrong about that. There might be another band, but certainly someone like that.
Yes.
And so we had this sort of contact with them, but we couldn't afford to do another vinyl at that point, which was a real shame, because they were probably the best tape we got by a long way. But we did the cassette, which sold pretty well. I think it must have got 100, 200 copies or so, because we only did them for like £2. So everyone at that point was willing to take a risk or a punt on what these bands might be like. But it was very interesting back then, because at that point you had no idea people in Sweden were listening to what you were listening to. It's not like the internet now, where you can contact people around the world within seconds and find out who likes what you like. Back then, to find a band from Sweden who liked 4AD music and The Cure and bands like that, and were making songs as good as they did. And so Victorian Tin was pretty much Christian and a guy called Eric Bergqvist, and they still sporadically record together as Victorian Tin, and Eric performs as Scatter as well.
Right.
It's still going. It's a good little scene out there.
Yes, I can't. Yeah, there's quite a history of sort of songwriting in Sweden. I know there's the obvious band, but there's others as well, aren't there? I can't remember. There's a band called Easy, and I can't remember if they're Swedish or not. I think they might be, but they're really good, and they're still going. So, so then as we try.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, I think it was interesting because English was their second language. The lyrics they used were far more interesting than "I love you, you love me, baby, baby" stuff. It was, there were words in there you wouldn't use generally, and it just made it a bit more interesting than than what was being written at the time.
My God, do you still own much of your everlasting back catalogue? Do you still have?
No, when I moved, I had to throw away a few boxes of records just because I couldn't take them anywhere with me. There was just too many. The Emily album, there weren't many left. That was the one that sold probably about 600 of the 1,000 we made. Right at Colour, probably about 350. And we did a single by The Finest Drops, which probably sold less than 100. And that was a full colour sleeve. We went to town on that one, and they split up before it was, or just as it was being released. They became Submarine. I don't know if you remember them.
No.
They split up just as it was being released. They were meant to do a tour to promote it, and there was a little advert in NME or Sounds or one of those, and then they split up. So so it didn't go anywhere at all.
My God, that's a hard business, isn't it? Really,
it's a real shame, isn't it? They were really good as well. Submarine were okay, but I think Finest Drops they were quite good. A bit like early REM.
Yes. Well, it's interesting because I was involved in the scene, and we decided to publish a book. We were very excited about it and went to sort of print 500 copies, and then the printer said, "Oh, you might as well have 1,000. It won't cost much more." And that's the extra 500 were the ones you had under the bed or in cupboards. And eventually you just get fed up one day and you just feel terrible, but you think, actually, we're just going to lob them, aren't we? Really?
Yeah.
It's
with the everlasting CDs we've done since the New Falls formed in 2018, 19, whenever it was, I've given more away than I've sold, because not many people have got CD players anymore, and I just want people to hear the music. I'm not 21 anymore and think we're going to take over the world. It's just nice to have people hearing what you're doing.
Yes.
So if someone's got a CD player and they want a CD, I tend to just give them it. And I sent the new Kobayashi album out, the first batch. I think there was 2 or 3 to Canada, 2 or 3 to America, 2 or 3 to Germany. And then I think I had about £10 of sales, and they cost me £60 to send around the world. So it's like,
Yes, package and postage has become more postage.
Outrageous.
It is a bit sad. Yeah, I quite enjoyed sort of giving this book away. It felt quite sort of good, but it was like I was kind of they were doing me a favour actually, even if they didn't really want it. I thought, no, you can have it. No, seriously, just have it,
Yeah,
please.
please
No,
read
don't give me any money. I really don't want it. But it was nice to do. So then, what happens with you in the 90s? Then the John Major years going into New Labour.
I think, God, look, going back, I mean, we had started a family in 1998, and that kind of, from that period to mid 2000s was the time when I'm 100% busy, got a family, I'm selling all my vinyl, unfortunately. And there just wasn't time to do anything else. And it was around about 2007, I got involved with a couple of bands, had very bad experiences with a couple of local bands who I gave far too much time to and got treated particularly badly.
Were you
And
Were you the singer in these
I
bands?
was, yeah, yeah. And I spent a year going up and forward to Peterborough to start songs with a band who then unceremoniously dumped me out of it. So I joined another band who asked me to rewrite all the songs, which I did. Did a couple of gigs, and then I broke my ankle playing football. And because I couldn't do the next gig, they threw me. They threw me out. So not only was I laid up for 13 weeks with a broken ankle, and I had no band to go, and I just said to myself, "That's it. I'm not doing this anymore. I can't. I just can't be bothered." And then just by luck, I got this message on. Oh, I can't even remember what the website was where I'd put an advert for a band years before, and this guy wrote to me and said, "Are you still looking at being a band?" And it was Chris, who used to be in A Craze. He was just starting what turned out to be the Sound of Pop Art. And I then spent the next few years running through songs in his kitchen, him playing acoustic guitar, me singing along. And eventually we got to make an album and then a couple more before I left.
Yes. So that was. So had you been in a band before that called? Was it Plum?
Oh, Plume. Yeah, that was
Plume.
myself and a friend at work. But to cut a long story short, it went pear shaped. It was good fun. It was recording stuff on his home studio. But I don't know too many details, but the guy I was working with wasn't well, and we kept having long gaps between recording. So I'd go around one day and we'd record something really good, and then the next week he'd say, I can't do this week, can't do next week, and a couple of weeks would turn into 9 months or a year, and you go back and record something else, and then it would be all right, and then he'd be ill again, and it just in the end I just stopped hearing from him, and it just sort of faded away, unfortunately.
Yes, God, that's. I know. I've had various friends who've been in so many bands. They go, "I've got a new band. This is amazing. This is going to be really good. The guitarist is incredible." And they say, "Oh, that's brilliant. Well done. How did it go?" Bunch of wankers. Bunch of wankers.
Yeah, I could certainly say that about the other two bands, bunch of wankers, definitely. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it was so it was like, and then it was like, okay, and then there'd be a bit, oh, a new band, amazing guitar. It was always an amazing guitarist. I don't know. It's oh, that's brilliant. I hope. And then it was like, how did it? Oh, okay, that's calm. It's kind of tricky, isn't it? Finding committed people who are just going to try and see it through.
yeah. Well, I think that's why I've been very lucky in this sort of from 2015 onwards, probably the last 10 years. I've met the right people, possibly because we're at an age now where we're not stupid youngsters. We just want to do. I mean, it's the last 10 years have just been really good fun. The start of the Lizard Brain stuff, the New Falls stuff, the Kammahav stuff, and now Kobayashi. It's just really good fun. And I think we're all at
Yes.
that age where no one wants to upset anyone. There's no egos involved. You just want to make the best songs you can. And you're not going to change the world, or you're not going to have. We get a really good following at some gigs because we've got people who really like coming to see us, and we can have 50, 60 people at a gig, and that's great. People really enjoy it. That's most of our gigs are free because most of the people come and see us are friends. So it's like you don't want people paying to see you. So it's
No, but the sound of pop art though. You did 3 albums,
yeah.
which is very. Where did you record those? Was that in someone's home studio?
That was a mixture of places. It started off at the studio in Milton, where I still record now with New Falls and Kobayashi. But But things got a little bit tense between Chris and the engineer there, which was probably Chris's fault rather than the engineers. We then moved out to a shed somewhere in Cambridge to do a bit. Then we ended up at a studio just outside Haverhill, a place called Keddington. So a variety of places. But Chris was always looking at other people to come in and do bits and pieces. So then you find by the second album, there's someone I never met singing 4 of the songs. And then on the third album, there's another person I've never met singing 3 or 4 of the songs.
Right. So when you went from your
and it
volume
wasn't like I was being
one,
eased out. It was like I was being marginalised.
yes, my God.
Yeah,
So
which
the
I was
first
the
album
singer.
was fun, but the second not so fun. And Drama by 2016, that
Oh,
was. Did you know?
in all honesty, looking back, there were some good times, but mostly you look back and think, wow, that was hard work. And, I mean, you'd rehearse and rehearse for gigs that there was no one at. And you think, oh, well, why are we doing this? We should be, playing, doing a lot of cover versions when I felt we should be playing our own songs. It was a tricky time. I had stopped enjoying it quite a bit. And by the end of it, I'd joined the Lizard Brain band, which was nowhere near as high a profile, but it was 2 guys who I considered friends that wanted me to write songs for them, as well as, because I didn't write any songs with the sound of pop art. I was just a singer. They wanted me to write songs and wanted to record them. And it was so much fun. You just go around and spend 3 hours having couple of drinks, and then, okay, we'll do a bit of vocals, do a bit of this. And it was a lot more relaxed, a lot more fun.
Yes, that again, that lasted about 5 years and 3 albums, didn't it?
Yeah. The 3 albums seems to be the right amount for
Well,
a
that's not
band,
bad. I did sort of work out that I think a lot of those indie bands I loved in the 80s and possibly the 90s, but, there was a kind of 5-year narrative. There was the 12-month honeymoon period, potentially John Peel playing a John Peel session, then the first album, the Transit Van around the art centres and indie nights, and then second, possibly the third one, but by then the tension is mounting, isn't it, really? And there's also a lack of money, and I think people are getting a bit fed up with it all.
Yeah, with the Lizard Brain stuff, I mean, the 3 albums were pretty good fun. The third one got to be a bit harder work. The trouble was, by that point, there were 4 members, and all 4 members were writing songs. So if you did a 12-track album, you had 3 songs on it, and the album would take 3 years to write or record. So that's a song a year, and I had about 15, 20 songs in a folder. So it got to that decision, okay, do I just chuck these away, or do I form another band and see if I can get some of them recorded? So that's why I then started the New Fools. So I kind of left Lizard Brain, but I still do the odd bit of recording. We've just recorded a new song with Mark and Richard recently. Myself and my wife Anne-Marie both sing vocal on it, which will be coming out in the next month or 2. So I'm still in kind of really good friends with Mark and Richard, really nice guys and really, really good fun to work with. But I just had so many songs that it was like, okay, let's start a new band. And I was lucky that, I was also in a covers band, and I just said to the guys in the covers band, do you want to stop doing this? It really was just punk covers for the odd night. And they said, yeah, let's do a band. And that's how the New Fools started. So,
Right. And then did you start your label again?
well, that kind of happened at the same time because we were recording a New Fools album. I got in touch with Christian from Victorian Tin, and he said, I've got a couple of songs. Do you want to try working on them? So I said, yeah, okay. And within a month, we had an EP. And I said, what do you want to call this song? And he said, I want to call it Everlasting, because he was a big fan of the label. And he said, why don't you get the label started again? And I thought, I could do, I suppose. It hadn't really occurred to me to that point. So the EP was Everlasting, the label was Everlasting again. And so it just started again, really, from there. And I thought, yeah, we could use Everlasting as the label to release all this stuff on.
My God, and you've gone on to release 5 albums.
Yeah. We virtually did one a year. And looking back at it recently, because we split up now, because our drummer has moved away, and I just thought the New Fools was 5 of us, and if one of us left, it's not the New Fools anymore. So we did the 7-inch single, We Love the Sun, last year, and that was the last release. But going up to lockdown, we were really, really motoring. We just finished our 2nd album. We were playing gigs, 2 or 3 a week sometimes, which was, we didn't do a massive amount of gigs, but at that point we'd done 2 or 3 in a short period, and we were building up quite steadily. And then lockdown came and we had this album just about to come out and gigs planned that all had to get cancelled. And that kind of stopped us in our stride a little bit. I don't think we'd have
Yes.
gone on to be successful or anything, but it was just we had quite a nice momentum going and would probably have carried us through. We did about an album a year, which isn't bad going.
God, that's very good. How did you cope with that lockdown period, not being able to go out and play music?
Well, I was quite lucky because I work on a school, and so I live in the school as well. So although the country was in lockdown, I had a huge field, a playground, a hall where we could play badminton, and I even went and did some work just to keep myself busy. So myself and my family were locked inside the gates of the school, but we had access to a running track, badminton court, little bits and pieces.
My God, so was it a bit like The Shining then? You were just in this
No,
massive play.
not like that. No, it was much more.
But did
relaxed.
it feel a bit spooky, though, being in a place which was empty?
No, not really. It was kind. We were at the end of a fairly big street, so it wasn't like you're cut off from the world. And there's a park not far away as well you could walk over to. But yeah, it just got to say. I mean, you remember what the weather was like? It was outstanding. So we sat in the garden most of the time. Yeah, and then it was like, oh, could go and do a bit of work actually, just to break up the momentum. And so, of course, we're the only people in there, so that was fine. But what happened as well was that Christian was sending me songs from Sweden. And to get an idea of how they sounded, I was recording a vocal into my phone and sending them back to him. And in particular, a track called Bones, which we put out as a single. He sent me it back, and I thought, geez, this is the best thing we've ever done. And this was with the vocal recorded on the phone. And it was just, heck, that's amazing how much, you'd never guess that the vocal had been recorded on a mobile phone and sent out to Sweden and put onto the track.
Yes.
And I thought, well, if you can do that, which we did, we then recorded a whole album using that method. But I thought if we can do that, the New Force could do an album as well. Now, that wasn't quite as easy because we're all in separate places. So you had to record a track to a click, which I sent to Christian, who then sent me it back. Then it went to the drummer to put drums onto the guitar and vocal to a click. So everything had to get put on separately. But we did it and made an album of, we made 8 singles and then put it out as an album. Which I think we did it over about 6 months, recorded 8 brand new songs from scratch.
Nice.
And if you listen back to them now, you can hear occasionally where things go a little bit out of time, but it's quite a good document of how things were. And,
well, yes, absolutely. I think we all had to get a little bit more tech savvy during that period, didn't we? And so, and was the band at that stage, has that sort of now, the New Fools has now come to an end?
Yeah.
That was with the drummer, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah. Pete's moved to the Cotswolds somewhere that way, and he did his last gig with us the 1st of March, I think it was this year. We did our final gig, which was a pretty good night. We have done a couple of gigs since with the band called the Groovy Cellar from Berlin.
Yes.
Their drummer Gunnar played drums for us, and he was outstanding. But they were the last 2. We just called ourselves the Fools for those gigs, but that's all done now. So we probably won't do that again unless we're offered huge money.
Because you had quite a night quite recently, didn't you? Which had this very amazing lineup of bands.
Yeah, we're very lucky. We went into one of the local radio stations in 2019, I think it was, and recorded an acoustic version of one of our songs called The House of Having Fun, which is a bit of a Northern Soul song, which somehow Matthias of the Groovy Cellar got to hear in Berlin. And this is pre-lockdown. He wrote to us and said, do you want to come and play in Berlin? And, we needed no sort of arm twisting to do that. We were well chuffed. Then, of course, lockdown came, so it got cancelled. And it was rebooked for the following year, and then it got cancelled again. And you just thought, well, this is never going to happen. But luckily, Matthias was persistent. So in 2022, we went out and played in Berlin, and then invited them back 2023. So they came and played in Cambridge. And it just happened at that gig, there was a guy there, and I heard him talking about the June Brides, and it turned out it was Frank Sweeney of the June Brides, the violin player.
Yes.
And I said, well, I love the June Brides. We got chatting about that music. And he said, I'm doing this band now called the Magic City Trio, playing sort of a dark country kind of music. And I said, "Oh, come and see you some point." And yeah, we went down to see them in London, and they're really great. They really are a fantastic live band. So they played with us in Berlin last year with the Groovy Cellar, and then we all played at Cambridge again this year. So we've got this quite good little connection going.
Yes,
And
it's quite a nice
great.
community.
Yeah,
And did you
yeah.
get a good audience for that night?
Not bad. I mean, I'd say it's about 60 or 70 people. I mean, again, it was free, but a lot of people didn't know who was coming, and they were watching and saying, "Oh my god, that Groovy Cellar are really good, aren't they?" I'm like, yeah, of course they are. They're really good. And then, "Oh, that Magic City Trail, they're brilliant. Yeah, they're really good." And it's like, this is all free. It's a great night.
Yes, well, you can't go wrong, really. So,
Well, we had Gunnar, their drummer, playing with us, and we hadn't rehearsed. No chance to rehearse. He arrived in Cambridge on the Friday. The gig was the Saturday, and after the first song, I'd forgotten he wasn't our drummer because he was so on the ball. He just did everything 100%. He was solid the whole night. So
God, that's so impressive, actually,
it
isn't it?
really was. Yeah, yeah.
I know I've done a few interviews with drummers who've been traumatized by studios and producers and click tracks. It's
Mhm.
yes, it's a bit of a. Do you enjoy the studio experience when you?
I love it. Yeah, yeah. Really enjoy it. Yeah. I mean, I as a singer, I often find I'm sat around doing nothing for a long while. Because what we normally do is get the bass and drums recorded first with a guide vocal, then we get all the guitars and any overdubs done on it, some brass, keyboards, and the vocals are the last thing to go on. So I'm waiting for it all to happen. But I love it. I'd go there as often as possible. Quite happy in the studio, sat
And
there.
what's your inspiration for writing songs? How does that sort of? How do you sort of begin with a song?
Sometimes it's just a title. There's been a few instances where someone just gives me a title and it builds from there. I think that one of the most popular New Falls songs was one written by Drew, the guitarist, and he just brought me this tune and said, "Oh, I think it's called I Found You." And I said, "Okay, I'll work with that." And then within a week or two, you got a song called "I Found You," and so it comes from there. Other times it can just be a line. I don't know. It's really difficult to describe. You look back on some songs and can't even remember. Can't even remember writing them, but they're there.
Do you have a book with all your lyrics in and ideas?
I did have. I mean, when I was in Just Lizard Brain, I'd built up about 15 songs, most of which were on the first and second New Falls album, but a few went to Kammahav as well. So I did have this book of songs. At the moment, we've just done the Kobayashi album, and I've sent about 8 more songs to Rich to start arranging. And he's incredible because I send him the bones of a song, and he sends me back an arrangement, and he can totally change them around, and they're really, really good.
Yes.
Um, but that's the end of my line at the moment. I think everything I've written is now with Rich or is being recorded with Kammahav. So yeah. So at the moment, there's nothing spare.
So how did Kobayashi the name come about?
The Kobayashi name. Well, what happened was the New Falls had a bit of a pause in things. And Rich was a big fan of the band. He'd written to us and said he really liked the fact we sounded like we were really enjoying ourselves all the time. So I arranged to meet him at the Edinburgh Fringe, not last year, the year before. And while we were there, I said to him, "Look, I've got a couple of songs. Do you want to have a listen to them, see if you can do any kind of arrangement with them?" So within no time, he'd sent these 2 songs back with arrangements. So I sent him a few more, got Dave, the bass player, involved, and within no time, we had an album ready of 10 songs. So we said, we need a name. And I kind of like the Kobayashi Bookstore, which is the bookstore in Murakami's book, Norwegian Wood.
Right.
Yeah, so Midori owns this bookshop called the Kobayashi Bookstore. It just gave me that sort of 60s feeling, so a Quicksilver messenger service kind of name.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think, I don't know, it just felt right.
And the album came out literally last month, didn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah. Yeah,
Blimey.
we're having trouble with Spotify at the moment, but there is a couple of samples on there I have in mind they're probably not happy with, which is unfortunate. But yeah, there is a CD copy. In fact, it's nearly sold out now. So yeah, you've got one of a very limited amount.
Yeah, and you got it on Bandcamp as well.
Yeah, it's on Bandcamp. Yeah. So it's easy.
So
easily
what's the process for putting things on Spotify? Is it quite straightforward or tricky?
It can be straightforward. It's always been straightforward in the past because generally we don't have samples of any kind at all. I did steal Kristin Hirsch's voice for a song about her on the Lockdown album, which got passed okay, so that seems okay. But I think we've got 2 songs. We've sampled Dan Treacy's voice from I Know Where Sid Barrett Lives for one of the songs.
Right.
And there's a song on there which is extensively got a sample of some 20s music, sort of ragtime kind of Charleston kind of sound, which is pretty obviously a sample. So perhaps whoever Rich uses has had a listen to it and thought, no, you can't put that up, and has sent it back to him refusing it. So we just need to find out which sample they're not happy with and either take it off or put it on Spotify without that track.
Yes, it's tricky, isn't it? I always thought so when things go out of copyright,
Yeah.
you still can't sample stuff, I suppose.
I would have thought the 20s song is well out of copyright now, but maybe someone's picked up on it and thought, no, you can't use that. I don't know. I'm not really sure of the process, but it is a shame though, because it's a great little song.
Yes, my God, that's some. So you got Kobayashi, which is so. Is this your main musical adventure at the moment?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, this and Kammahav. I mean, I'm still working with Christian at long distance. We were going to do an album, but it's really hard working at distance to make an album. So we've just decided we're going to just record songs and when they're ready, put them out. So there'll be more Kammahav releases. I'm still working on and off with Lizard Brain. I've got a couple of free songs in process with them. A couple have been going on for about 5 years now, so it's just a case of getting round there and finishing those off. But Kobayashi, yeah, we're working on new stuff now. We've got these couple of gigs lined up, which will have new songs. At the moment, we've only played live. We've only played the album tracks, but we've got 7 or 8 new songs now, so we'll start introducing those to the set. So yeah,
That's amazing. So you got 3 musical adventures going, and and the label as well.
Yeah, the label now is pretty much not sort of in a I don't know how to describe it really. It's still there. We still call everything we put out everlasting, but it's not like I've got bands left, right, and centre that I'm putting out stuff by.
Yes.
I'll put out the Kammahav stuff. I mean, Victorian Tim we put a CD out by as well. But we'll wait and see what happens on that front. I'm not looking for new bands to put out on label or anything like that. It's just like a vehicle, I guess you'd call it, to put out.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and if you could have whispered anything to your 16-year-old self starting out on that musical adventure, what's your kind of main lessons or sort of bullet points that came out?
Oh God, I think the main thing I would say to myself is don't miss those things that at the time feel important. For example, the Chills played in Cambridge, and it was like, I'll go and see them next time. But I don't think there was a next time. I ended up waiting until about 15 years ago to go and see him in Brighton.
Yes.
Well, I mean, loads about. I mean, I only saw the Juniper Eyes once. I wish I'd gone down and seen them more. More of those gigs at that time, I wish I'd taken advantage of. So in the last 5 years, we've kind of said to ourselves, now if something comes up, we're going to go, even if it's Robert Forster in Vienna or Micro Disney playing their gigs in Dublin. Okay, we might have to give up something, but we're going to go and see it, because the thought of not seeing those things is like, not anymore. I'm not going to miss those things that I really, really want to go and see.
Yes, it's interesting because actually I've often thought that I wished I'd gone to a lot more gigs now and I wish I hadn't been so uptight about it was very tribal in the 80s, so I probably ignored quite a lot, and now I look back and think, that would have been an amazing concert, that would have been incredible. I mean, yes.
I still look back, I never saw the Farmers Boys, and that's the one band I look back now and think I wish I'd seen the Farmers Boys. And you see those gigs, the Farmers Boys, the Higsons, Orange Juice, Aztec Camera, and you think, why did I not go to gigs like that? How did I miss those gigs?
Yes, because they probably played a lot around this area, didn't they, actually?
Yeah, almost certainly, yeah.
But they went on
I think
to
they
form...
recorded in Cambridge.
Yeah, there was a guy I interviewed who had this studio in Cambridge, which
Spacewood.
Yes, that's the
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not here anymore. So,
But it
but
was
I think
funny because I only came across it from a guy in LA who was in a band called Jellyfish. And he said, God, everything in this studio that was recorded in the studio, I would try and buy. And I was like, oh, I never even heard of it. So I managed to track down the owner. He was very perplexed and said,
right.
and he did an interview and I heard all about it. But it
Yeah,
was amazing, like the bands and the albums that were all recorded in
yeah.
Cambridge and
Studios.
legendary. Yes, but the Farmers Boys then sort of became the Avons, and then there was
Yeah,
the Great Outdoors,
Great
and now I
Outdoors.
don't know what they are now.
They're in
Actually,
a band now called the McGilty Brothers.
that's
So
it.
that's three of them. Mark, Stan, and Barry are in the band called the McGilty Brothers. They
Yeah.
play very country. Went to see them at a pub in London called the Boogaloo, which was Shane McGowan's old pub in Highgate. And they're not the Farmers Boys, but it's still good to see them. They're a bunch of old
Ye-
guys playing country now, but they're still great.
Yes. And do you go to many like festivals, like the Maverick Festival and
I'm not
things
really a
that?
festivals person, in all honesty. I can't camp. No way I'm camping anywhere. I need a hotel room, and I'm not a big. I don't know. I'm not a big outdoorsy. I don't like being stood a mile from the stage when things are going on. I know there are little ones you don't have to be, but
Yes.
I quite like going to see a band. I want a gig that's finished by 10 o'clock with seats. That's what I'm looking for these days.
Well, yes. Well, actually,
Bed by 11, and I'm not going to have a bad back at the end of it.
and that was me in conversation with Tony Jenkins talking about his life in music. And I'll put some links in the notes below so you'll be able to find out more about what he's up to. Thanks a lot. This has been the C86 Show. David Eastaugh. Have a great week. Stay safe.